Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York. Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York.
Un ratito nada más. Ey, ey, ey. 4 de julio, Farley y Ulay. Ando con mi prima borracha Rulay. Los míos en el Bronx, saben la que hay. Con la nota en hoy, por Washington hoy. Willy Colón me dicen el malo. Ey, porque pasan los años y sigo dando palos. Vendiendo discos como cuadro Frida Kahlo. El perico en blanco, sí, sí, el tusi rosita. No te confundas, no, no, mejor evita. Ey, un chat de cañita en casa de Toñita. Y PR se siente cerquita, sí, sí, sí. Tengo el campeonato, nadie me lo quita.
Cerveza nuevo, nombre one de cerveza nuevo, ¿ok? Puerto Rico.
Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaetón y dembow, ey, con reggaetón y dembow, sí, con reggaetón y dembow. Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaetón y dembow. Me siento como el lápiz en tope del dough. Cuando yo nací fue que nació el flow de low a low. Ping pong, flow pesado, Big Pong, con silenciador le robamos las gatas. J-Bone, ey, yo estoy en la mía, no tengo adversario, no. Con los Yankees los me aguanzato, a correr que otra vez lo sacamos al estadio.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir
Ya mismo nos vamos.
un verano en Nueva York.
Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que
So good, bro.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, big up to Ricky who put that video together. It looks so fantastic, man. Appreciate him and everything he does. For show. Hey, it was great seeing you, bro. We just hung out for a little bit. You and your
I know.
family and stuff. We got to hang out and chill, dude. It was great.
I know, it was amazing.
It really was. And, you know, I've been reflecting on it afterwards. Me and you have had conversations. And it was funny, man. Somebody recently sent me like a post from a very large company that is having a meeting or having like a gathering of agents at the moment. And they were posting like their takeaways, and it was super interesting because they were all of these like memes, like where focus goes, energy flows, and you know, you got to show up in life. And and what she said, it was one of our leaders in our organization, and she was like, yeah, like I'm so grateful that you guys gave me tactical information that agents have taken back to the marketplace, and they're already starting to do deals with it, which is what our goal and objective is, right? Because, you know, I think most people teach mindset because they can't teach tactics. And, you know, I think what would be cool is for us just to recap some of the main tactics that we were teaching at the Do More Deals Summit. So those who weren't there and who missed out, hopefully they won't miss out next year.
Well, I think the way you can start it too is you read a book and it talked about 4 different ways of growing a business.
Yeah.
And what were those 4 different ways? And then we can show you how 2 of those I know we focus on very heavily on it for sure.
Yep.
So what are the 4 different ways to grow a business if
Yeah,
somebody wants to do more deals?
Yeah. So in any business, I don't care what you're selling, whether it's financial services, whether it's oranges, whether it's online courses, or if it's real estate, there's only 4 ways to build any business. And all of the like kind of big people teach these ways, whether it's Tony Robbins or Myron Golden or whoever, because there's only 4 of them. The first way is to increase leads. And most agents' issue for the last couple of years, just in general, is always leads. But for the last couple of years, when transaction volume drops by 30% plus, that's the major kind of bottleneck to their business, right? Is leads. The second way is to increase conversion. So meaning with the leads that are being produced, converting on those, right? The third way is to ascend them into like higher products and services. So in other words, for real estate, that would be like, I sell you a property, maybe a primary residence, but then I help you to build a portfolio of real estate. So I ascend you into other, kind of products. And then the fourth is retention. It's retaining them for longer, right? Where they do multiple transactions with you over time. So our focus, as we were thinking about this and putting this event together, I'm constantly thinking like, hey, what do agents need right now? And what they don't need are wispy platitudes. What they don't need is like, you can do it. What they don't need is like, where focus goes, energy flows. Like they need tangible tactics that they can utilize to increase leads and to increase conversion. And those were 2 of the things that we focused on during the event. And you spoke specifically on one of them, which is what you're doing to increase leads for your business. And that's being open to the creative side of real estate, not just listing a property, but also providing other options like wholesale or novation or, sub 2 and things of that nature.
Well, even at the event, so what we spoke about was one, when I think of increasing leads, I'm like, okay, like what are different ways that agents are increasing leads right now, even though number of transactions is down? And what we came up with was to start thinking like investors, to start thinking like wholesalers. So there's different people in our same industry that have the same target avatar or same target market that we have, meaning our target avatar is a motivated seller. So who else has that avatar? Investors and wholesalers do. So what we realize is that if we start thinking like, okay, how are investors, how are wholesalers generating motivated seller leads, and what can we learn from them? So one of the ways was pay per lead, meaning like there are providers of leads that target motivated sellers that you can, very similar to Zillow, without having to sign a 6-month contract or a year contract, you can pay them to generate motivated seller leads for them. We had motivated sellers there as our guests who went over what they're doing to be able to target motivated sellers for you. That is literally like almost like imagine having a faucet and just going like this. Bloop.
Yeah. And I think what's so, to your point, what's so, I guess, unique about that is that the traditional kind of, I don't know, like gurus or kind of guides or coaches or whatever name you want to call them in real estate, they just perpetually recycle the same kind of sources of leads depending on the season or the flavor of the month sort of thing. So it's those 4 horsemen: expireds, cancels, for sale by owners, just listed, just solds, and past client centers of influence. The issue is it's not that those lead sources are bad per se, but 2 things can be true at the same time. So truth is on a spectrum. So while that's true, the question is when volume drops dramatically, are there other sources that have higher degrees of probability of people doing business in those sources? And the answer is emphatically yes, right? And one of them is, motivated seller leads, which are essentially cash offers, right? It's just a lead generating magnet. And these huge platforms have recognized that it's a lead generator. And that's why they all have cash offer programs, whether it's Open Door or Zillow at the time, they got out of that business, or Homelight or whatever. And what they do is they know that only 4 or 5% of the time does it produce an actual purchase and sales agreement, meaning that the seller is open for they're going to make because of the price that it is. The other 90+% of the time, 95% of the time, they have a lead that they can sell back to an agent for, 35, 40%. So wouldn't it logically make sense in an environment where transaction volume drops, and what I'm actually interested as sellers is to get a bunch of sellers to raise their hand to say that they're interested in a cash offer. They're revealing that they're interested in selling. And then I can either offer them a creative solution, or I can just list the property. And either one's okay, because in either one you get compensated.
Yeah. The other thing is, whenever I think of expires for sale by owner, just listed, just sold, the way I look at that as a marketing technique is I'm looking at it as public data. These
Yeah.
are all public data. So if you're gonna do the public data route, there's not only those, you can actually go very deep because there's a lot of different information that is public data that can put you in a different position. So somebody asked me, it's like, what's the fastest way to generate leads? I'm like, how much money do you have? And they're like, well, I don't have much money. If you don't have much money, then you're going to have to get more creative where you're going to the public data source. If you have money, then you can invest in things like pay per lead. I think it also depends on your conversion level as well, too. So meaning if you have the money, but your conversion sucks, then it's going to be a little bit more challenging for you to convert some of this pay per lead. So when it comes to data, there's so many other avenues to go for public data. One of them is probate. That is public data, meaning you can go on your county's website, or you can go down to the courthouse and you can get the list of probates. There's different lists that you can get. Like we were when we were more heavily in the public data source, we were targeting things like for rent by owners. You know, we were targeting absentee owners. We were targeting divorces. We were targeting obituaries instead of and probate as well too. So there's so many tax liens, so many affidavits of death. So there's so many different lists that you can go deep on that if you're going on the public data source, where everybody is competing on the expires for sale by owners, but there's equally as good lists that are a lot less competitive because it requires a little bit of specialized knowledge.
Yeah, and what you're doing is in a sense, you're filtering data. So let's say if everybody, I think, would agree. I don't think me and you could be in a room and I could say, hey, does it make sense that probate and estate properties have a higher motivation than just like general? And you're like,
Then
well,
I
yeah.
just listed, just sold call.
Yeah, it's like, of course they do, right? They have a higher degree of probability. So now, will I bump into some of those when I call expired? Yes. Will I bump into some of those when I call FSBOs? Yes. At the same time, if you were to just focus on that group, I am making my time more efficient because now I'm swimming in pools of information where 65% of those homes are free and clear, where the motivation is very, very high, right? Same thing with cash offers. Like, will I bump into people that are motivated if I call expireds for sale by just listed, just sold, sphere of influence? Yeah. Would it make logical sense for me to swim in a pool of data where everybody has already identified themselves as somebody who's interested in selling? Yes. It's just a logical, practical thing to do. And I think the reason why that's so challenging, Jose, is that the major voices in our space have never really talked about it, right? So we have this like kind of collective agreement that these are the only sources of business. And to deviate from that seems like it's,
Well,
not going to work in some way, or is like dangerous, when in fact the opposite's true. It's actually just being more efficient with your time.
Well, even when the motivated seller leads came up, I looked in the room and I'm like, this is a great lead source, but everybody doesn't trust it. Meaning
No.
because everybody, like, you ask people how to get it. Let's say I'm having a conversation with you and I'm like, hey, how would you get leads? They're like, oh, Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, probate expires, just listed, just sold expires, and FSBOs. And then you throw in something new. So I literally got up at the end of his presentation. I'm like, look, guys, I know this is weird to all of you guys, but this is something that I'm.
Oh, is that why you got up?
Well, I looked at the audience, bro, and the audience was kind of like, okay, do we do it? Do we not do it?
Yeah,
Do we trust
and
this
you're
person?
kind
Do
of
we not
sitting
do
there
it?
you have this direct experience. You're like, bro, I've made so much money doing this. Like, I need to just really emphasize this. And then you got up and
This
gave
is
a
important.
testimonial.
So I gave a testimonial for that reason, not because I want to be in the spotlight or anything like that, you know, but more or less for people to be able to be like, okay, if Jose's doing it, then it must be a trustworthy thing. And there was zero incentive for me to
No.
do that, just so you guys know. But then, like, let's say, so now we're like, okay, like, now it's like, okay, we're getting more creative as to like our public data list and as to who we're targeting. Then it's like, okay, if you've got money, you're getting more creative about instead of Zillow finding motivated sellers. Then the challenge becomes, okay, how do I convert these people into actual listings? Or I talked to this guy, he's like, look, I got 2 leads from motivated sellers and they both want to sell, but I am having trouble converting them.
Yeah. I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because like when we had, and that's why, we brought specific people. So we have Pace there. And what I shared with Pace while he was there is, and I'm excited to have that content go out so people, people can learn from it, sort of thing. But I was saying to him, like, you have to stack skills. So the first skill, which we work with people on Wednesdays on that free kind of role play where me and you role play with people live. By the way, I'm creating a school community where people can get access to it, because people ask me, how do I get that link all the time? They can just go there and look at our calendar and click, and then they can join. But that's one skill, is what to say and how to say it. The second skill specifically that Pace stacked was that whole creative finance world. All of those different options, all of those different exit strategies, right? The third skill that he stacked is he really understands title very well and how it's transferred and all of that, right? And kind of the legal component of things. But because of that, that allows him, when a scenario presents itself, to go into these various, like, kind of think about them like libraries of data in his mind, right? And he can use the skill of asking questions to determine what the situation is. Then based on that situation, he can go in and use the kind of specialized knowledge of the creative options and solutions. And then based on how to structure the deal, he can go into his mind and say, okay, how would this work title wise? And then he can come up with a solution that is bespoke, meaning like unique to that particular person's situation. And that's something that you, over the last, I don't know, maybe 18 months or so, have been working on, right? Where, me and you worked on initially what to say and how to say it, the specialized knowledge just to list property. But then you started to stack the skill by going to these events and saying like, hey, what are these other lead sources? And how do I generate those leads? And then the next skill that you stacked on top of it was like the conversation for those lead sources, which is, very similar, but like a little bit augmented. And then you started to stack the skill of these different solutions, like these different options that are at their disposal. Like you told a story recently, I think on that call, where you were like, yeah, dude, I went on a listing appointment, or you were pre-qualifying, and she's like, yeah, like, I think I'm gonna have to do like a short sale. And you're like, okay. And you start asking some questions, and she's got an assumable mortgage at like 3%. And you're like, well, what if I told you that by offering to allow somebody to assume your mortgage, you may not actually have to do a short sale and you could get some money? And she was like, really? And you're like, yeah. And then you did that precisely, listed the property, somebody assumed the note, she made money, you made money, and everything was great. But without that specialized knowledge, you would have basically said, I can't help you. If it was only I can list and sell the property for you.
Yeah. Well, what I realized is a couple years back, I started attending different events that are more on the real estate investing side. And what I realized was there's a lot of information that we as real estate professionals should know. It's sad, bro. I'll ask an agent, be like, hey, what is a 1031 exchange? And they'll be like, I'll be like, how long does somebody have to identify a property? How long do they have to close on it? They'll be like they have no idea. Imagine going to a car dealership, bro, and you're looking to buy a car, and the salesperson comes up and like, hey, bro, does this car have navigation? And they're like, what's navigation? Or,
Yeah, or
hey, does it have a heated seats? They're
Yeah,
like,
or like a physician, and they're like, "Hey, what does this blood work mean?" And they're like,
it's sad because it means that, and that's why realtors in some cases have a bad rep because they're doing just enough to get by. They're learning just enough to get by. What's happening in my career, bro, is I am getting so many people reaching out to me, asking me for advice on what to do. Like, not only what to do about like their real estate, they're like, what do I do with my business? What do I do with my finances? What do I do with real estate? Hey, what are taxes like in this situation? And what I realized is that in order to like really be able to convert at a high level, if you understand different creative options or you have a really good understanding of real estate, it actually allows you to convert at a higher level. So there's a couple of things in conversion. Conversion, in my opinion, is one, you have sales skills, meaning you understand how to ask questions, how to close for appointments, how to close for business, but it's also you are extremely knowledgeable about your product. And if you're extremely knowledgeable about your product, people will be like, oh man, like this is a great combination, basically. And that
"Yeah,
helps out with conversion.
yeah." So, and that speaks to what we were talking about. So, if we circle back, it's like, okay, there's only 4 ways to build a business. The first is increase lead sources or increase leads. And what we talked about during the summit and what we're talking about now, where we're share with those that, are we have the good fortune of having their attention, is that one of the ways to increase lead sources is you have to be open to learning new things. So like if you got really good at the expireds and the data just comes to you and you pick up the phone and you call and that's all you role play and that's all you do, like, okay, great. What I'm aware of is there's another lead source that in my opinion is superior because of the fact that it's market resistant, because of the fact that 65% of those homes are free and clear, because of the fact that the second largest cohort in the country are boomers and they're 65 years or older. So it's going to be like a huge kind of lead source moving forward, is probate. And then what happens is people shut down immediately because you have to learn something new. I have to learn how to get the data. I got to learn maybe perhaps a nuanced
What to say.
conversation because it's similar, but it's slightly different, right? And you have to pre-qual a little bit different. And I got to learn how to get ancillary services and I got to learn how to create urgency so I can get listing agreements signed before, kind of things are complete. I have to understand a little bit of legal aspect of probate. And people are like, I don't want to do that, but then I also want to make more money. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me. That's not the way it works, bro. Like you get more because you become more, not because you want more. So what we're talking about here is that I think that the marketplace is demanding that we become more. And for those who do become more, who can not only understand retail, but understand all of these other options. And really another big thing that came to me during the event is that the commission ends up being a mental barrier to all of these other options. It's like a mental roadblock, right? So it's like, there's a saying in the spiritual world, like there's a veil over the eyes of the unbeliever. Well, in this world, it's like there's a veil over the eyes of agents and it's a commission. And it causes them to completely not see that there's all of these other options and choices. And I do believe that those who do become more, because the marketplace is demanding it, will be able to provide more options, more choices, therefore more value. And as such, will get their unfair share of the business. And you're an example of that. I have another coaching client that I work with. His name is Abel. He's out in California and he's just like you, dude, doing like $2 million a year in GCI. About 700 comes from the creative side. Another 1 point something comes from the retail side. And he's just rocking and rolling, but it's because the commission isn't a blinder to him. He's been able to remove that.
Well, even like, let's say we went over the 4 different ways. We went over to ascend now, right?
Yeah.
So like when I think about ascend is, let's say I help a seller sell a property, right? Now, if that seller's not buying anything else, they have a problem. They have to reinvest that money into something. And they're either going to go in the stock market, they're going to go in the bond market, they're going to go into an annuity, or they're going to go into some sort of CD or something like that. when I think of ascend is there's so many different opportunities that come from helping a client at a high level, especially a seller. So let's say I help a seller sell their property. I've had sellers that have become private lenders for me,
Yeah.
you know? And like what we're only doing is we're only thinking about it as one transaction. When I work with somebody, I'm not looking at it as one transaction. I'm looking at it as, okay, how can I help you do a good job for you? Then how can I help your family do a good job for your family? And then how can we do other things together? Now they become a solution for me where they're private lenders and they're helping me in my ADU journey to build accessory dwelling units, you know? So it's
Mhm.
like this mentality that it's like, I'm only looking at you as a seller and I'm only collecting a commission check, not looking at it like, oh my God, there's so many opportunities. I'm still learning things at
Yes.
15 years in the business and close to 1,000 sales done. I'm still learning things, which is insane. That's how deep this real estate industry is. That's how many different things there are to learn. Where at 15 years in the business, I'm still being challenged.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people who are watching this or perhaps attended, it's like, look, if you've plateaued, you know how many people I talk to that plateau at certain levels
Bro,
of production?
bro, some people plateaued with their thinking in the 1970s and
I know,
1980s, but they're
right?
still thinking like 1980.
They really are, and their mental maps are that of that time frame, and we don't live in that world anymore. And if you find yourself over the last 2 or 3 years kind of plateauing in transactions or volume or units or income or whatever, it's because you've stopped learning new things. And you just have to ask yourself, "Hey, when was the last time I learned something new? When was the last time I dropped myself into being unconsciously incompetent? Like, I don't know what I don't know." I was just telling you this recently. We were talking before, and I was like, "Hey, bro, it took me like 2 years to figure this other thing out that I'm doing." But I went from selling 2,000 homes a year and
Not
80% of that business listings sold and like dominating that to the dropping into, I don't know what I'm doing. And then gathering information, taking massive levels of action. But I told you on that call, I'm like, yeah, I feel like now I know what I'm doing. But it took a while to figure that out. Right. So if you're finding yourself, here, Jamie on Instagram says, yeah, you can act like a financial advisor, have a little wealth. Well, I mean, if you're finding yourself, the last time you learned something was a while ago where you were uncomfortable, then you're stagnating and eventually that goes backwards. I mean, that's just what happens. And then to what Jamie's saying is you position yourself not necessarily as like a financial advisor. I see what you're saying, but it's more like a guide.
guide, yeah.
I'm a guide to help them to solve their problems, whatever those problems are as they pertain to real estate, right? And as I gather more information, as like you learn about, hey, here's how you can invest 401k funds into real estate, or hey, here's how I can lend money in my 401k plan, which I know you've done. Here's how,
It's amazing, by the way.
yeah, it's amazing. Or where you're like, hey, bro, for the people that have invested with you, you take the next step to make them feel comfortable is you send them a book called The Banker's Code. And when they read that book, they're like, yeah, bro, this makes me feel even more better. I would have done it anyway, but now it makes me feel even more better. So every time, like, understand that if you want to be the agent of the future, it's going to require that you learn new things.
Yeah.
And it's going to probably take a little bit before you really feel like, okay, I feel comfortable, right? But the goal isn't to be comfortable. The goal is to be constantly learning.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've role played with hundreds of agents, and even at the event, like there was a couple of people that come from the previous world that I belonged to, and I'd be like, okay, ask me how much I want to list my home for. And they have one way of asking, like, how much do you want to list your home for? And then I'm like, okay, ask me like what price do I want if I'm giving you a cash offer or I'm receiving a cash offer from you. And what I realize is that they're looking at the scripts incorrectly as well too. Instead of like, how much do you want to list your home for? All that's asking for is pricing. And what I explained at the event too, to help with conversion, is understanding that in order to know if you have a lead, you have to know the motivation, you have to know the timing, you have to know the price, you have to know the loan situation, you have to know what type of sale do they want? Do they want private or do they want a cash offer? You have to know if they're open to something creative, the condition, decision makers, and agents. If you're able to find out those 9 things, you're able to determine if you have a lead or not. I had a guy call me today back. I have an appointment with him today, and he's like, look, I just want to be, he probably looked me up online. He's like, hey, I just want to be clear for you that if you're coming over for a listing, I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in the cash offer. Luckily, I had already researched the property, and I believe that there's a good chance I can help him in terms of a cash offer for his property.
Right.
Luckily. So I said, that's not a problem. I'm not approaching this from a real estate agent perspective. Just so you know, we're on the same page, and I'm approaching this from a cash offer perspective, and we're on the same page about that. He goes, oh, okay.
Yeah, and provided, and because you've stacked that skill, because you understand that, because you're not myopically, like narrowly focused on just the commission, you're able to provide a different solution.
And
And
the
either one
pricing
you're
piece-
fine
yeah,
with. Like either
And-
one you're fine with, you're going to get compensated either way.
I'm good with it. I
Yeah.
don't have a preference. I'm like, okay, whatever is best for you as a consumer, whatever you want to do, I'm perfectly okay with it.
Yeah.
I don't care if I make 50K or 10K. As long as I am able to monetize in some way, I'm going to give them what they want and what's best for them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So again, like there's only 4 ways. So if your goal in 2025 is to do more deals, these are the only 4 ways you're going to do it. A, you need to increase leads. If your lead sources that you're currently working would allow you to increase leads, you'd already be doing it, and 2023 and 2024 wouldn't have been either stagnant or backwards. Now, I know that that's hard to hear, but it doesn't make it any less true. So it means you're going to have to learn something new. Yeah. The second thing is conversion. And I talked about this briefly where me and you had, initially you came to me and were like, hey man, like I need to,
Learn.
I want to get better at kind of this skill of what to say and how to say it. And your natural disposition, by the way, your personality profile is not that of a salesperson.
No. A lot of people think it is because
I know.
they become a really good one, but it's not.
It's not. You actually willed yourself to become it because
I wanted it so bad.
your desire was so bad. Now, my personality profile is like perfect
Rock
for
star.
yeah,
rock
it's
star.
like perfect for a salesperson, which is interesting. So it just goes to show like it doesn't really matter. It's really more down to like your desire. But we spent a lot of time, and I remember one of the mental maps that really, really stuck with you, and the reason why I know it because you've mentioned it a bunch of times, is I said to you like, hey man, like let's think about this together as a team. And at the time I was like, well, how often do you practice, or how often do most people practice? He's like, I don't know, maybe once a day for like 30 minutes. I'm like, okay. And that person thinks they're hot stuff, right?
Mhm.
They think they're really doing it. But if we do the math on that, they practice like, what is that? Like 2.5 hours a week.
It's very
Time.
minimal.
It's times 2.5 times 4, 10 hours a month times 12 is 120 hours a year. And then I was like, all right, dude, well, here's what I'm doing. I'm practicing twice a day, 6 days a week, and I'm handwriting out and chanting. So I'm practicing for an hour and a half every day. So if we do the math on that, times 5, or actually times 6, times 4, times 12, I end up at 432 hours compared to somebody's 100. And then I asked you a simple question, like with no ego, who's going to have higher conversion? And you were like, well, you are. And I'm like, exactly, bro. So then you have to make a decision if that's going to be one of your competitive advantages, because I decided that it would be for me. So you want to like control the controllables. And that's something that all of us completely have control over. It always fascinates me, Jose, when we're in rooms and I'm like, hey, and it could be 50 agents, it could be 500 agents or 1,000 agents. I'm like, hey, how many guys role play every day? And it's like such a small portion of the room. And I always joke, I'm like, oh, all you guys are independently wealthy. And everybody chuckles like, ha, ha, ha. But it doesn't make like the law of humble arithmetic any different. So that is definitely something that, you can do in this environment. So one, increasing like leads means you're going to have to learn new lead sources, whether it's cash offers, whether it's probate. And these are pools of information where there are a higher density of motivated individuals, primarily sellers, because that's what we're interested in. But then I also need to get really good at the conversion piece, and that's the what to say and how to say it.
Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking about it, because I had this realization, I'm like, why is there agents that do a decent amount of business, but they're not scripted? Because there are some agents like that that
Yeah,
are,
I
the
have a
fact is
sneaky suspicion, but like,
that,
go ahead.
well, what I was going to say to you is a lot of it is warm business. If
It's repeat and referral business.
it's repeat and referral business. So if you're an agent that's like, well, I've never role played in my career, and I don't need to, I almost guarantee you that a lot of it is repeat and referral business or some sort of like inbound marketing where the credibility is already established. But if you're competing against cold business where the credibility is not established there yet, if you're not scripted, I'm finding myself on every single appointment, bro. I am competing against 2 to 3 different people very often, in some cases even more. So what I think about when I think about conversion, because this is one of the 4 ways to grow a business, you can grow your business simply by improving your conversion. Meaning if your conversion goes from 50% to 75%, even if you don't turn on more leads, you can make more money and you can do more deals
That's right.
just by
So,
doing that.
and I love that.
And
So, like,
that's why I wanted that to be my competitive advantage. I wanted that to be a competitive advantage because I knew that if I didn't work on the conversion piece, even if I get 100 leads a month, if my conversion is low, there's going to be money slipping through the cracks. So I was like, no,
right.
no, no. Conversion is a huge piece of this puzzle. I want to maximize my return on investment. I am going to become a very good converter
Yeah.
because of that.
And it's like an unforced error because you have complete control over it. Like there's so many things that we don't have control over. That's something that I do have control over. It just requires discipline and consistency. And to your point, that allows less to slip through your fingers. So when me and you would go on listing, I mean, my closing ratio was like between 80, 87%. So when I went on appointments,
That's it.
80 to 87% of the time, somebody signed a
Damn,
contract.
that's
And
kind
the
of low.
vast and the vast majority of that business was they don't know me. So I'm competing, right? And that's but it's logical and it makes sense to me that you would be competing so much because we looked at your numbers and your transaction volume in your county is down 50%. So there's more agents chasing the same deal. So by making a commitment to skills in your sales process, because that's also part of it. What am I sending before I see them? What am I sending something like a video before I see them? Like is somebody calling to confirm? Like what's that whole process look like? Am I driving them towards reviews? And by making a commitment to conversion and new lead sources, like we're talking about, that will naturally, not because we think we're like geniuses, it just will naturally cause transaction volume to go up.
Yeah. And then here's the other thing that I'm thinking about. So you went over the 4 different ways. The last one is retention.
Yep.
And this is so good because when some of you guys may not know this, but my parents owned a cowboy store growing up. It was a check cashing business as well too. And I sold cowboy boots, cowboy hats, Stetsons, Wranglers growing up. But I worked there from the time I was 9 to 23. And what that business taught me, and this was the key, is that the key to that business and any business was repeat clients. Meaning like delivering such a high level of service that you make sure that the client's satisfied at the end to get that repeat business. So when I got into real estate, one of the competitive advantages that I had, and I would tell this to people, I'm like, look, I'm not looking at this as just one sale. I'm looking at this like a lifelong partnership. I'm looking at this like, hey, I do a good job for you. I want to do business with you. I want to do business with your brothers. I want to do business with your cousins. I want to do business with your friends. I want to become the realtor for the family. I'm not looking at this as just one sale. So in order for me to accomplish that, I am going to deliver you the best possible service that I can and make it so that we build this relationship over a long period of time. And that's what I noticed at the cowboy store was if I can get somebody walking to the door, I was going to do little things like remember their names. I was going to remember the names of their kids. I was going to remember like what they like doing for a living. I was going to ask them how their day was. I was going to build a relationship with them. And what started happening when I realized that was that all we had to do was get a customer to walk through the door. And once they walked through the door, we were going to deliver such high level service. So our competitive advantage there was that we were going to provide fair prices, meaning relative to our competition, but the best customer service that they ever had. And we started getting repeat business. So in real estate are you thinking about it as consumers from a long-term perspective? And are you approaching it in a way where your entire goal is to do repeat business with them, their family, their neighbors, their friends? That way, that's the fourth different way of growing the business.
That's exactly right. And being mindful of that. And when with the conversion piece, because I want to talk about what you just said, but Gabriella, who's on Instagram, listen to what she just said. I went on 5 listing appointments in 2 days, used part of your script in the presentation. I got 4 listings out of 5. I like the part where we asked them if they decided to hire me in the beginning. So this is a perfect example of how making a decision to go all in on that which you can control, which is your particular skill, will help you convert at higher levels, which means you'll do more deals. And then in terms of that ascension piece, where by cultivating basically a database of past client centers of influence that you have really good relationships with, that will be something where people continue to engage with you over time. And that's that process. So I increase leads, I increase conversion. Those people end up becoming past client centers of influence. I treat them really well. They come back. But then as they start to come back and do repeat and referral business, I have these lead sources and this conversion, which is constantly adding people to that bucket, right? Which over the last 10 years you've been doing. So now, a good portion of your business are people coming back saying like, hey man, you helped me before. Can you help me again?
So if you're not doing the business that you want and you are looking to do more deals in 2025, think about it. All of these are different levers that you can pull.
Yes.
Which one of the levers can you improve? And that's how simple it is, guy. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm with this big brand name because they help me with do more deals with the conversion part of it.
I know. I love that, bro. When people tell me that, I want to like slap them around. It's like amazing to me.
Well, the thing is that there's 4 different levers to grow any business, and these are the 4 different levers. And once you figure out, be like, okay, do I have enough leads? No. Okay, what do I got to do to generate more leads? What
do I have to learn
to generate more leads?
Generate more leads.
Like if you're doing just listed, just sold, our friend Angel owns the Enzo dialer, and that's the best way to do just listed, just sold. Or not just listed. That's the best way to call a mass list where you're looking for a needle in the haystack.
Basically. Yeah, because what agents are doing right now is they're using dialing systems that get 6 to 7, 8 contacts an hour, where his gets 30
to 40.
It's just superior. It's better.
So you're talking to more people. So it's like, okay, what do I got to do to increase the leads, to be more efficient with the lead generation that I'm doing? Okay, what do I got to do to increase the conversion? Okay, can I ascend these people into different products? And then retention. How can I get repeat business to be able to monetize it? So ask yourself, which one of these 4 things do I need to improve? And the good news is that if you guys are looking for guides, you've got 2 people right here that have sold combined probably about 3,000 properties that can actually help you pull any one of these levers that you need help with. How to generate more leads, how to convert, how to ascend, and how to get repeat business, how to have the right mental maps to be able to get these things.
Yeah, that's right. And then, so for those who would like are listening, I'm aware, or for those who came to the event, like I'm aware that it can be like just overwhelming because we're saying all this stuff to you and you're like, man, where do I start? Well, what I would propose or suggest is what me and Jose did. I've been attending events since I was 26. It's funny because my honeymoon was at a sales event. I went 2 days early to do the honeymoon stuff, 3 days early. And then I went to a sales event. You know what's funny, dude? I was giving a talk and there was a woman in the audience and she was like, oh, I feel so bad for your wife. And I looked right at her. I was like, she's very happy with the outcome. Like it turned out well, right? So, but anyway, when I would attend these events, it's about implementing. So I think, remember, the purpose of learning is doing. It's not just accumulating information. And because we're like awash with information these days, I think we can confuse that. So the purpose of learning is to learn about the thing so you can learn to do the thing, and then you actually do the thing. So if you're not actually doing the thing, you haven't actually learned anything. So if you're listening to what we're saying, it's like, look, dude, there's only 4 ways to increase a business. So let's say in the first one, which is increase leads. So of what you heard at the summit or what you're hearing from me and Jose today, it's like, which one am I going to focus on? Maybe it'll be the cash offer program. Maybe you'll reach out to motivated seller leads. Maybe it'll be probate, right? And and then, but I'll focus on it for let's say 90 to 120 days until it's dialed in. And then let's say we talk about, okay, like, well, how can I increase conversion? And it's like, well, I can hop on that call with Jose and Aaron on Wednesdays. I can get involved in a role play group, right? I can start writing out the listing presentation. I can make a commitment where I'm going to write it out for 60 days straight. Then let's say it's the retention piece. Well, what am I doing for my past client centers of influence? Like maybe I'll figure out a way to maybe do an event once a quarter or something like that. And then you focus on it for 90 to 120 days until it's done. So that way you're not just letting all this stuff like just blow by you, sort of thing.
Yeah. And here's what I was thinking, because we read a book that showed us the 4 different ways to grow a business. There's another book by Alex Hermosi, How to Generate Leads. And what he does is he breaks down how to generate leads into 4 different buckets as well too. So even these different buckets, like, okay, how do I improve conversion? Is conversion only what to say and how to say it? No, conversion is a lot more than knowing what to say and how to say it. Conversion has to do with how you're dressed.
Yeah.
Conversion has to do with how you're groomed. Conversion has to do with your online reputation. When people look you up online, there's a lot more than just learning what to say to improve conversion. And it's the same thing for even leads. For leads, it's like, okay, what are 4 different ways that I can increase my leads? There's 4 different buckets. Bucket number 1 is warm. What is considered warm in real estate? People that know you, like you, trust you, that would do business with you. This is called your sphere of influence. Your warm is actually the cheapest way for you to generate leads, because these people already know you, like you, and trust you. That's a business plan right there. Okay, what do I got to do to improve the warm leads? Then there's cold business, meaning like, okay, like what list can I target to be able to generate cold business? Probates, obituaries, for sale by owners, whatever the list is.
And making data-driven decisions on cold, instead of just being like, the general that everybody does. Like, hey, what has the highest degree of probability of there being a high density of motivated individuals in that lead source?
Well, I'll tell you this, like people come to me sometimes and they're like, oh yeah, Jose, just so you know, I just got this email and I'm signing up for this bank-owned real estate agent training. They're telling me that they're coming back and that I should sign up for it. And I'm just preparing. I'm like 2 years ahead of it. I'm like, bro, have you looked at the data for the pre-foreclosures? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, look, here's the data. Here's what it was in 2008, 9, and 10, and here's what it is now. I'm like, there's different ways to get business that have a higher likelihood just based on the data. So whatever it is, what Aaron's saying is, if you're going to go cold, be like, okay, do some research. And if you don't know how to do the data, that's even why it's more important for you to be involved in the stuff that we're doing, to be able to learn how to do this. And because you can have the drive, the desire, but if you've got the wrong strategy, it ain't going to help you guys.
No, not going to help at all.
The third way is buying leads. That's the
Which
third
is like,
way.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The third way is buying leads. What is that? That's Zillow. That's realtor.com. That's ZBuyer. That's a bunch of different things. Now, if you want to learn the good ones, reach out to us. We know of providers that can help you generate leads through either direct mail or pay-per lead. Then the fourth way is to use social media as a lead generation mechanism. But these are the 4 different ways that you can generate leads.
Yeah. And each one of those, by the way, requires specialized knowledge
and a business plan around it.
And a business plan. So it requires a strategy. It requires specialized knowledge, right? It requires me being really, really intentional about cultivating that particular source and recognizing that if it's not worth doing for a decade, it's not worth doing for a day. Like, it's probably going to take a little bit of time to cultivate. Because what I see happen is that people get, they're just patience levels very small. They'll try something for 30 days and be like, well, Jose, I didn't get a deal. And you're like, you got to like give it a little bit of time. You know what I mean? And each one that you're saying. So let's say if it's like just List It Just Sold, I have to figure out like, okay, well, what's the best tool that I have at my disposal in order to do that and do it at scale? And that would be something like the Enzo dialer. So I have to learn that. I'd have to figure it out. It's probably going to cost a little bit of money. Fine. Then let's say we're going to do cold and I decide to do probate. It's like, okay, well, now I need to learn that. That's a specialized skill. It's a specialized kind of niche. So where do I get the data? How do I get contact information? What do I need to say and how do I need to say it? And then asking yourself what Pace said, what do I want? Let's say you want to do probate deals. You want to do 2 or 3 a month. Great. Who has what I want? Who has the specialized knowledge? So I have a course on that. I'm sure there's other people that do. Who has the specialized knowledge? And what do I need to do to get access to it? It might be giving them money for the course. It might be doing something for them. So then they, spend some time with you, something that's of value to them. And let's say you decide to do the media thing. Well, what I'm aware of is everybody understands that media is important, but almost everybody's doing it wrong because they don't understand story brand. They don't understand hook, message, CTA. Like they don't understand how to actually use those platforms, what they're for, how to use them. And I want everybody to recognize this is no different for me and Jose, just like it's no different for you. So when I introduced Jose at the event, I said, hey, our relationship was formed by him reaching out to me. I had something that he wanted, which was specialized knowledge on what to say and how to say it and how to list property in high volume. So he, approached me for 6 months. Great. We started role playing together. We formed this relationship. I shared with him everything that I knew. He took that information, became the #1 real estate agent in Ventura County for listing property for 7 years in a row. But then as I was kind of evolving and doing my thing and selling hundreds of homes a year for 10 years in a row, Jose's the one that introduced me to media. Now, he didn't teach me how to do it, but he pointed me in the right direction. Hey, you need to figure this out. Then he also introduced me to this other thing that we're doing now, with EXP and, that opportunity. And I had to go down the well on both of those because I had no idea what I was doing. It took me 2 or 3 years to figure out the media. It took me 2 or 3 years to figure out how to do this attraction thing at scale. So we have to learn new things just like you do, but the process is no different.
Well, here's what I would even say. A part of even like generating leads, Novello, has to do with the strategy. You have to ask yourself, okay, if I'm going to focus on warm, cold, PPC, or social, how do I focus on generating seller leads, not buyer leads? So which one has the largest aptitude to generate the seller leads? Because here's the reality. If you control the listings in the marketplace, guess who's calling you?
Everyone.
The buyers.
Yeah.
The buyers. So if the buyers come from listings, what's the point of advertising for a buyer if the buyers naturally come from listings? No, advertise, generate listing leads, and all of the buyers come regardless. So in the warm, let's say for warm, how can you make it specifically for listing leads? Is okay, who can I add to my sphere of influence that can provide me with 3 to 5 listings a year? If you're calling probates, there's somebody called the professional fiduciary or professional trustees that have the resources and capabilities. These are people that I want to build relationships with. If you're targeting warm, be like, okay, you find out that somebody flips like 10 properties in your marketplace a year. Great. This is somebody that I want to build a relationship with. This is somebody that I want in my sphere of influence. Great. So you start being specific as to who you're targeting that is more likely to give you listing leads or listing business. Then you're like, okay, cold. Which lists are listing lead lists, which a lot of them are. Then it's like, okay, you're buying leads. Okay. Are most of Zillow leads buyers or sellers?
Buyers.
Okay. So if I know that they're buyers, why would I want to pay them for
Correct.
the money? So it's like, okay, instead of them, it's like, okay, who can provide me with motivated seller leads? Okay, I'm okay with paying for that lead. And then it's social. Okay, what type of content are you producing? So it's like if I'm producing content for like, hey guys, this is the first time home buyer program. This is how to buy your first home. Guess who you're going to attract?
Buyers.
Okay. Now, if I'm producing content like, hey, this is how to prepare your home for sale. This is the 5 things that you need to learn how to prepare your home for sale. Who do you think you're going to attract?
Sellers.
And who do you want to attract?
Sellers.
Sellers, because the buyers come from the listings. They're calling you regardless, so it makes no sense to advertise. So this is our marketing plan. We take a listing. We tell everybody that we took the listing. We sell the listing. We tell everybody that we sold the listing. And then we repeat that process, basically.
Yeah, and what I wrote down as we were saying this is like a goal is where are we going? A plan or a strategy is how we're going to get there. And I don't think many people get to that second piece. They get all jazzed, all super excited, all motivated around a goal. They confuse setting the goal with actual execution.
How are we going to get there?
How are we going to get there, right? And the hard part about it, well, there's two hard parts, because one is when you're smart, hardworking, and ambitious, it's figuring out what you want. So it's not getting what you want, it's the problem, it's deciding what you want. So first, like thinking about like, what do you actually want? But then the second is I need to devise a plan or a strategy, because that's specifically how am I going to get there? And if you don't have the plan or a strategy, consult with guides who have already been to that mountain, who can tell you very clearly the blueprint on how to get there. Here's what you need to do, 1, 2, and 3. And that'll increase the chances that you'll get what you want. But I think, that strategy piece is just so, so important. So when I went down that path of like, hey, I need to learn this media thing, I basically asked you who has the best strategy, who understands it the best. And you're like, yeah, dude, that guy does. Great. I got access to that guy. I paid to get access to that guy. And I learned his strategy. Then when I was doing like this attraction thing, it's like, okay, well, who understands this the best? Well, there's a guy who wrote a book who's like the Bible of doing that in that model. And I studied it. And then I was like, okay, to even add to the media thing, I started to study story branding and all this other stuff, because all that is a strategy. Right. And what me and Jose are saying right now, which is why we're doing the Do More Deal Summit, why we keep hopping on, why we keep, adding value and kind of coming to you on these platforms, is because I would propose that the strategy that is being taught is 50 years old. It is an old strategy, just like buying a house, paying it off, and investing in a 401k plan is an old strategy that worked 50 years ago. And it's not as effective and efficient now. Now, the challenge is when you go against old strategies, it's kind of like, I think it's like Plato's cave, which is where there was this whole group of people, and it was like this whole kind of civilization, and they were in a cave, and they were kind of chained to the floor, and there were fires behind them, and their shadows were dancing on the walls, right? So everybody came to believe, collective kind of belief, that the shadows on the wall were how they lived their life. That's who they were, right? Well, one day, one of these guys recognizes like, hey, he kind of looks behind him and he sees that there's a fire behind him. And then he looks down and he realizes there's chains on the floor, but the chains are all unlocked. So he gets up and he leaves the cave. And imagine seeing, Jose, a blue sky for the first time. Imagine seeing trees or like water and hearing the sound as it percolates, or even touching it and feeling what it feels like against your skin, right? Imagine feeling grass on your feet for the first time and how vibrant the colors would be. So his mind is like completely blown, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to the village and I have to tell everyone about it. So he runs back to the cave and he's like hair on fire. Like, man, you don't understand. There's all of this stuff out there. There's a whole nother world out there. And the question is, how do you think the people in the cave responded? They did not give him flowers. They were not super excited that he was there. They told him to leave and to never come back. And that is part of our nature as humans, because anything that's new is perceived to be threatening, because our information causes us to feel safe. It makes us feel like we're in control. But I do believe that we're in a world right now that's changing so fast and so rapidly because of technology, and in our industry, like all rules are changing, like things are changing, companies are merging, that there's two skills that are the most valuable. The first is ability to learn things quickly. And me and you take that responsibility heavily, right? Because we have a small audience that is listening to what we're saying, and we have influence over what they're thinking. So I need to learn fast, and I need to learn what's working right now. Yeah. The second thing is the willingness to change your mind. And that second one is really, really hard, because what's actually true is most of us aren't interested in the truth. We're just interested in being right. And we get emotional about information, right? So, what we're telling you is like, hey, it's not that that's not true what you've been learning. And it might help you to do 30, 40, 50 deals. Like, yeah, fine. What we're saying to you is that there's other information, that there's another way of doing it, that you can leave the cave and realize that there's a whole nother world of real estate that's available to you. And when you do, you will be disproportionately rewarded for your bravery and courage, because there's very few people that are playing that game. Jose is an example of that. That coaching client that I mentioned to you, Abel's an example of that. Even Angel is an example of that. How he went from agent to wholesaler to solar to, he's just like this whole big, huge entrepreneur sort of thing. So, we're going to keep coming to you with that information. Usually when you hear new information, I want everybody to recognize something. It usually creates friction for you, because the new information pushes up directly against what you currently believe to be true. So if you find that there's friction, that's a good thing. Remember, frustration is a precursor for learning. If you weren't frustrated, it means you're not like learning anything new. So I implore you guys, keep coming back to the well. Hop on the role play call so you can learn what to say and how to say it. Will help you with conversion. Watch these videos, go back and watch them again. Reach out to the vendors that we're sharing with you. Join in our community, because our community is full of people that are figuring this stuff out and doing deals. And we look forward to the opportunity to be of assistance to you in the future.
Later, guys.
Peace.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York. Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York.
Un ratito nada más. Ey, 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 4 de julio, Verde y July. Ando con mi prima borracha Rulay. Los míos en el Bronx, saben la que hay. Con la nota en hoy, por Washington hoy. Willy Colón me dicen el malo. Ey, porque pasan los años y sigo dando palos. Vendiendo discos como cuadro Frida Kahlo. El perico en blanco, sí, el tusi rosita. No te confundas, no, mejor evita. Ey, un chat de cañita en casa de Toñita. Y PR se siente cerquita, sí. En el campeonato nadie me lo quita.
Cerveza nuevo, number one de cerveza nuevo, ¿ok? Puerto Rico.
Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaetón y dembow, ey, con reggaetón y dembow, sí, con reggaetón y dembow. Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaetón y dembow. Me siento como el lápiz en Cape del Dow. Cuando yo nací fue que nació el flow de low a low. Ping pong, flow pesado, Big Pong, con silenciador le robamos las gatas. J-Bone, ey, yo estoy en la mía, no tengo adversario, no. Con los Yankees los me aguanzato, a correr que otra vez lo sacamos al estadio.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir
Ya mismo nos vamos.
un verano en Nueva York.
Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover.